Now, yes, I'm going to start in English, Lianne, so that you can understand what we are saying. Thank you very much for being here with us today. I want to thank also, well, first of all, Ricardo, who is the Americas Director for Istituto Marangoni, who is here with us also, and everybody that helped this talk to be possible, starting with the Bea Moda. Bea Moda is a government department of that promotes fashion in Argentina, and Díada, which is the communication agency that works with us for many years now in Argentina, and also Magma Futura in Uruguay. They are all our partners for this talk, so thank you very much. And thank you, Lianne, for being here from London digitally, but still from London, so thank you. Last thing I say, and then I promise I will not talk anymore until the end. We have the Q&A part. I will ask you if you can put your mics off so that we can listen what Lianne has to say and share her screen. So welcome, Lianne.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. So as Federica said, my name's Lianne Trowbridge. I think I understood a little bit of Spanish, but I am based in London. I studied myself at Istituto Marangoni London years and years ago now. Coming in as a women's wear designer, came out as a menswear pattern cutter, and that was the start of my career, both in pattern cutting, but also in sustainability. I've always been interested in making sure that the industry that I work in is as sustainable as possible. So I was working out in the industry. I've worked with clients like Erdem, Ralph and Russo, lots of brands based in London, as well as advising brands on the materials that they're using. And oops, got a little pop-up there. Let me, I'm speaking in English, that is correct. And when the pandemic hit, like a lot of people, as a freelancer, I was a little bit stuck in terms of pattern cutting. I ended up spending the pandemic back home in France. I didn't have my equipment with me. A lot of businesses weren't working with manual pattern cutters anymore. So I had to start learning how to work digitally. There's a little bit of background noise there. I'm not sure who has their microphone on. If they don't mind switching it off, perfect. So during the pandemic, I started learning Clo-3D, and it kind of filled for me the gap of digital pattern cutting, but also simulation aspect of Clo-3D, which is super exciting and that we're going to touch upon a little bit today. And since that, I've been working with Clo-3D with my own clients. So I'm now a manual and a digital pattern cutter. And I've also come back to Marangoni to start teaching it to students. And I teach the introduction on our bachelor's course. So I teach them the basics so that they can then start working on their own designs. And I've spent all of my morning, it's 2 o'clock here, so I spent all of my morning with my own students looking at their designs and seeing all their inspiration. And hopefully I'm going to inspire all of you to start working with Clo-3D. In this very, very brief, I'm going to have to keep it very short because an hour is not a lot for Clo-3D, but I'm going to try and pack it with as much information as I can so that you can then take these tools and explore with them in your own practice, in your own designs, and in your own aesthetic. Does that sound good to everyone? Cool. So in terms of Clo-3D, I'm just going to share, I've got one very quick slide for you, and then we're actually going to dive in straight into Clo. Go. Why do we use Clo-3D? So the main reasons that we use Clo-3D is it's more sustainable. Working digitally and being able to develop a product in the digital world means that we can cut out a lot of the toiling process, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, which also not only is more sustainable in terms of the amount of fabric that we're using, but also makes our whole design process and our whole workflow a lot quicker, because the changes that we make in Clo, we can immediately see in our 3D simulation. And we don't have to go through
en los cambios que hacemos los cortes, porque lo podemos ver en la simulación y no hace falta que volvamos a coser todo, como ya les voy a contar. Coser no es mi fuerte, pero aquí lo podemos hacer de una forma mucho más fácil. Y también nos permite explorar distintas ideas de diseño, empezar a intentar distintas tendencias y también ir combinando lo que creamos con otras herramientas y softwares como Illustrator, Blender, y también nos permite tener todo lo que tenemos de las prendas, traerlo a las otras herramientas o viceversa. También llevarlo a Premiere o After Effects o de nuevo a Blender para poder crear ambientes virtuales nuevamente que nos permitan crear y entender bien el diseño y todo lo que estamos creando. Bien, ¿hay algo en el chat? Voy a dejar entonces que puedan responder en español.
Quería pedir si por favor se animan a apagar los micrófonos, gracias.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So it's also
Perfecto. Entonces, esto va a significar también que ¿por qué usamos Clo-3D? Porque nos va a permitir trabajar en distintas partes del país, distintas partes del mundo. Y lo que pasa también en la industria de la moda es que todo está muy dividido. Tenemos gente que tiene oficinas en Nueva York, en Londres, luego la producción ocurre en la otra parte del mundo, en la otra punta, y esto nos permite poder comunicarnos y enviar cambios de productos con China, con cualquier otro lugar, y poder desarrollar de forma digital archivos que se pueda ver en distintas partes del mundo, darnos feedback sobre ese producto, y por eso es que esto se convierte en una herramienta tan sostenible. Otra
integration with AI, because artificial intelligence is a huge part and it is having a huge impact on what we are doing in our fashion design practice, and it's something that we're all going to have to learn and
de
adapt.
prendas es algo que todos tenemos que aprender y a lo que tenemos que adaptarnos con el tiempo, pero hay varias herramientas de Clo-3D que nos permite hacer una excelente incorporación con la inteligencia artificial y poder también entrenar a Clo-3D y cómo funciona con la inteligencia artificial. Nos permite también poder experimentar con distintos avatares y distintos tipos de patrones y estampados. Ahora vamos a ir entonces directamente a la herramienta. No hablo más sobre sus beneficios, sino que nos vamos a empapar de las prendas. No sé si todos pueden ver ya mi pantalla. Con suerte ya la pueden ver. Así que este es nuestro espacio de Clo-3D. Yo estoy trabajando en una computadora portátil, así que espero que ustedes tengan pantallas bien grandes para poder ver esta pantalla que es bastante pequeña, pero estas son todas las funciones que nos ofrece.
Is that we've got two workspaces. The first one on the left, this is our 3D tool space, 3D workspace, and this one on the right is our 2D workspace. And we can therefore switch back and forth and see what's happening in both at the same time. Down on the left here, we have our library. So if you are working with Clo for the first time and opening it up for the first time, you'll have a little blue N next to this little download button. I would recommend that you download that straight away, because that's going to give us lots of extra avatars, fabrics, trims, all sorts of extra things that we can play with when we're working in the Clo-3D space. We've got our history tab down this side here, which is exactly like it would be in Photoshop or Illustrator or InDesign. It will give us the history of what we've done in the project, and our new modular library.
Los cambios que fuimos haciendo en el proyecto. Acá tenemos después la biblioteca modular, que nos permite ver los distintos patrones que hemos ido creando. Y aquí tenemos el buscador o el navegador de objetos, que nos va a mostrar todos los detalles de pespuntes, de géneros, todos los detalles que hemos ido incorporando al diseño de la prenda. Y en la parte inferior tenemos el otro editor, que es que trabaja de forma muy parecida a Photoshop. Este va a tener toda la información sobre el patrón, la prenda, el avatar, todo lo que seleccionamos, ya sea en el espacio 3D o en el espacio 2D. Van a ver aquí que tanto el espacio de 3D y 2D tiene su propia caja de herramientas. Algunas de las herramientas son específicas de uno o de otro espacio, pero son muy similares. Si trabajan con alguna pantalla un poco más chica, tal vez no puedan ver todos los iconos, pero pueden ver cuáles son las herramientas disponibles en el menú de arriba.
I want to draw your attention to here is that at the moment we are in simulation mode. If you click here at the top, you'll see that there's 6 different modes in Clo. The main one that you'll work with is simulation. And if we have time, I'm going to try and squeeze it all in. We'll also have time to look at animation. So actually putting our garment in movement and seeing it move in the 3D space. Print layout, which allows us to know how we're cutting out our pattern in terms of print and fabric consumption. So this one is very practical if you're actually intending to bring your garment into the physical space. And then emulator, which will allow us to create fabrics. We're not going to touch on that today. That's quite a complex one, but there's lots of information online if you want to explore that one further. Modular, which will allow us to create some blocks, and UV editor, which is specifically for trims and zippers. So back to my Clo-3D workspace. I'm going to start by showing you how we can actually bring avatars into the space, so that we've actually got an avatar that we can work around for the project that I'm going to work on today. So in our library at the side here, I've got garment, avatar, hanger, all the way to stage are files that will already come in Clo. I've added some extra library assets here, which I'll explain in just a minute. So avatar does exactly as its name says. If you double click on it, you can choose from female, children, male, or 3D shape avatars, which are used particularly for accessories.
Avatares en 3D, que es particularmente para accesorios. También tenemos distintas perchas que podemos elegir según cómo querramos elegir mostrar nuestra prenda. Y lo que voy a hacer ahora es elegir las distintas carpetas de avatares. Voy a elegir uno femenino.
Appears at the bottom here. We've got some folders that we'll look at in a second, but we've got a whole range of avatars that appear at the bottom here. And if I hover over the name, you can see little previews of our avatar from front, side, back. So as always, it's giving us a 3D dimension to the project that we're working with. To add an avatar into the space, you can either click and drag into your 3D space, or you can just double click in your library and it will add that avatar. And when we've got our avatar in the space, you'll notice that in my 3D window, I've got the outline of my avatar that appears, so that this gives me an idea of the scale when I'm going to be working on patterns to make sure that I'm not making them too big or too small. In terms of working in Clo and moving around the 3D space, I would strongly recommend, I'm not sure whether you can still see my video at the same time, so I'm going to stop sharing 2 seconds just so that you can see what I want to show you. I strongly recommend that you work with a 3-button mouse. So a mouse, not a magic mouse or a trackpad. It can be done, but what is best for Clo is a 3-button mouse. So one where you've got the middle button that you can roll and click. Back to screen sharing. So when we're working in our 3D space, in order to zoom in and zoom out, I'm going to use the middle button on my mouse and scroll that up and scroll that down, exactly as if I was trying to go up and down an internet page online. To move left and right, up and down, I'm going to click the middle button on my mouse and move left, right, up, down.
Del mouse y van a ver que lo puedo mover para cualquier dirección. Como estamos trabajando también en un espacio 3D, algo que es importante es poder rotar. Eso lo van a hacer con el botón derecho del mouse para poder girarlo. En 2D es exactamente igual. Utilizo el botón del medio para acercar y alejar. Y nuevamente el botón del medio para trasladar la imagen. Ahora, con el avatar, si vuelvo aquí a el espacio de 3D, lo voy a hacer un poco más grande para que puedan ver lo que estoy haciendo. Tengo los avatares en la biblioteca y distintas carpetas con las que puedo ir jugando. Esto nos da distintas formas y estructuras del avatar que nos permite, por ejemplo, si nosotros queremos hacer un proyecto digital, una campaña digital, por ejemplo, o algo que querramos llevar al metaverso, podemos elegir el cabello del avatar que podemos ir agregando al avatar. Lo voy a rotar para que puedan ver el cambio. Podemos ir aplicando distintos cambios al avatar. También ir eligiendo distintos tipos de zapato, de calzado. Tienen distintos tipos de tacones. Van a ver cómo cambia también el cuerpo del avatar cuando se ajusta al tipo de tacón que está utilizando. Y luego tenemos la postura.
When you're working on a garment, you work in what is this standard A pose. It's not very natural, but it is what is going to help us when we're starting to work on a garment to make it sit, especially with armholes and sleeves, as nice as possible. Once you've got everything sitting the way you want to, and hopefully I can jump to that at the end once I've finished my project for today, you can select whichever pose you want by double clicking on it, and it will adjust your avatar to the pose that you want. Depending on the product type, you've got ones that are more or less dynamic. So I'm going to make sure that I go back to my A pose. And again, what is new in version 7.2 of Clo is that you can adjust up to the details, particularly if you're doing a digital campaign and you've got accessories, bags, you can change the hand pose as well, depending on what you want, whether you want your avatar to be holding an accessory or not. So let me go back to my avatar folder. We've talked about hair, we've talked about pose, we've talked about shoes, and then we've got a folder called size, which obviously Clo works in a default tools size. You've got a range of other sizes that exist in Clo. So if you double click, I would recommend working in list format in your library. You can click here to switch so that you can actually see the different kinds of sizes that exist. Again, as part of 7.2, Clo have added in some EU sizes as well. And for the sizes, it works exactly like everything else. I'm just going to double click to adjust my avatar, and you'll see that my avatar automatically starts adjusting the body proportions to these standard sizes that Clo has created. So this one is a really practical tool. I find it really interesting, particularly when I'm working with students, to make sure that they can see what it would look like on a size 10, but also on a size 12, and see how the garment adjusts and how it stretches and might distort depending on the size of your avatar. Obviously, we don't necessarily always work to these standard sizes. So if you want to adjust the size further, if you go up to the top toolbar here, we've got a section called Avatar and Avatar Editor, which will open up this section here, which allows you to adjust the measurements
Y ustedes
directly.
pueden ir ajustando directamente las proporciones del avatar, porque esto puede ser algo necesario cuando estamos trabajando con algún maniquí en particular, con alguna blanca o alguna marca que elijamos o algún proyecto específico de algún cliente. Nosotros tenemos también una serie de patrones que son el patrón estándar que usamos en Marangoni. Aquí van a ver que en este editor podemos ver dos distintas secciones. Una es el cuerpo total y la parte inferior es sobre otros detalles. Esto es porque las dimensiones que ustedes ven en la parte superior deben ser colocadas primero. Y esto nos va a ayudar a ir calculando todas las dimensiones que tenemos en la parte inferior y se asegura de que esté en proporciones y que se parezca muchísimo a la forma de un cuerpo humano. Aquí vemos la forma total del cuerpo que nos va a ir dando distintas proporciones. Vamos a ver un cuerpo rectangular, vamos a ver un reloj de arena o algún cuerpo con más curvas. Lo pueden cambiar al modo simple y acá nos va a dejar ver bastante, de una forma muy directa, cómo ajustar el tipo de cuerpo. Entonces voy, por ejemplo, a ajustar la altura, cuál es mi contorno de busto, y ver también las distintas figuras y formas corporales, y van a ver que directamente el avatar 3D se va ajustando. Estas no son exactas mis medidas, así que las voy a ajustar un poco y voy a hacer que mis caderas sean un poquito más grandes. Una vez que ya estoy satisfecha con mi avatar, voy a guardar los cambios. Así que lo va a guardar. Así también puedo asegurarme de usar siempre el mismo avatar y tenerlo ya configurado. O como en este caso, puedo directamente comenzar a trabajar como vamos a hacer ahora con el avatar que ya creé. Aquí ya vemos que tenemos el espacio 2D. Van a ver que la silueta se ha adaptado a los cambios que hice en el editor de 3D y voy a utilizar este avatar para poder ir creando el patrón, el molde. Hay distintas formas de hacer esto. Podemos hacerlo a través de la biblioteca modular, podemos comenzar a crear el patrón directamente en la ventana de 2D. También podemos adaptar distintos moldes que
like we would do in real life. So I'm going to start by creating a little pattern directly in my 2D window. I'm going to start creating a basic loose fitting bodice. So in your toolbars up here at the top, you've got in your 2D toolbar a first little triangle which allows us to select patterns, one which allows us to edit patterns, the fullness tool which we might try to cover a little bit later on today, and underneath that, our polygon tool, which looks like a rectangle where there's a little corner cut out of it. This tool here is the one that's going to allow us to create a complete pattern. If you click and hold on it, you'll see that you've got different tools that hide underneath it, exactly like in Photoshop. And what I want to, you've got the option of working with a rectangle, an ellipse, or a spiral. Spirals are really good when you're trying to create frills. I'm going to work with a polygon because this allows me to create a shape freehand. I'm going to get there. With that polygon tool, I'm going to start making a perfectly symmetrical design. So I've got my center front line here, and I'm going to just go ahead and start drawing my pattern shape. So I'm going to go in and start drawing, and you can see that if I start clicking and dragging, it will create Bezier handles like I'm working with in Illustrator. If you're not happy with the line that you've created, you just click delete on your keyboard. I'm going to go back, go in and create my armhole again. Come and draw my side seam. I want that to be straight. So side seam straight down, back to my center front. And I'm going to come and close it at the top here. And once you've closed your shape, Clo will start synchronizing. And you'll see that this becomes a pattern because it's now filled in with white. And I've got a matching pattern piece that appears in my 3D space here. Now with my edit pattern tools, I'm going to come and adjust. I think I want to make this a little bit wider. And I'm then going to come, because I want my pattern to be unfolded and symmetrical, so that I want the same thing on the other side. I'm going to come and select my center front line, right click, and unfold symmetric editing with sewing. And this allows me to now have a full front. For my back, I'm going to keep it very simple for the beginning of this demonstration. I'm going to come and select this pattern piece here, Command copy and Command V. Or if you're working, if you're working on your keyboard, right click, copy, paste. And once you have selected paste, you can then go and click in your 2D space to come and create your back pattern piece. I'm going to come and use my annotation tool here to come and annotate these. So this is going to be my front. This is going to be my back. And then I'm going to come and position them in my 3D space and add in some sewing. At the moment, these are just two pattern pieces that sit in the 2D space, but they are floating. If I try to apply simulation, which is gravity, it will apply gravity to my fabric. That's this big arrow at the top there. They're just going to fall to the ground. So Command Z, let's go back, edit, undo. Come on, Clo. Clo's not very happy with me today. I'm going to reset the 2D arrangement. So bring them back so that they're hovering in the space. And then I'm going to come and position my pattern pieces in 3D. There's two ways of positioning pattern pieces. The first one, if I select a pattern piece, you can see that we've got this, what we call a gizmo that appears. And this is going to allow us to move pattern pieces in our 3D space. The yellow square will allow to move it left, right, up, down. The circles will allow you to rotate it. And the blue line will allow us to move it front and back, which is very important in this case, because if I come and move it to the back, I need to make sure that it actually sits behind the avatar and not just here hovering in front. So I'm going to come and push it to the back. And I'm going to make sure that I've got, so my basic textured surface, which shows me the wrong side of my fabric in gray, and the right side of my fabric in white. So here you can see that if I sew this, this is the wrong side of my fabric. So I'm going to come and rotate this. So rotate this around so that I've got a bodice that will actually close together. This is a little bit time consuming and it can take a while to get used to. So the second method that exists in Clo, which is a little bit quicker, is to use an option called arrangement points. I'm going to move my pattern pieces. If I go into my avatar display options here, this is my avatar view options. I've got a little icon here with little blue dots. And if I click that on, this is what Clo calls arrangement points. And this is going to allow me to very quickly come and position a pattern piece around the body. So if I click my front and hover my mouse over a point, you can see the gray outline that appears, and I can just click to confirm that position. The advantage of working with arrangement points is that Clo will automatically put the gray side of my fabric towards the body of my avatar. So for my back, I'm just going to click and click again. Now, all that's left to do is to actually sew this together. I'm going to switch my arrangement points off. And for that, I'm going to use my little icons, which look like sewing machines, funnily enough. And these sewing machines, you've got two different types of sewing. I'm just going to go in with my basic segment sewing, which is this first sewing tool here. If you want to learn more about how to use free sewing, there's loads of videos online, but you can also see if I hover over the tool, there's a video link there to the Clo website, which will also show you a video of how to use the tool. So I'm going to use my segment sewing, and these sewing tools, you can see that they exist in 3D and 2D, and this is one of the tools that works in both. So you'll see that whatever I click here will match in my 2D space, and I'm going to come and connect this body closed. Because I've unfolded my body with symmetric sewing, symmetric editing with sewing, it automatically will do the same sewing on the other half. So I only need to work on one half of my garment, and then I'm going to simulate. Looks not too bad. I'm going to want to adjust this a little bit because I want to have this a little bit looser so that I can come and create a gathered waistband and then a little flared skirt. So in order to adjust this, I'm going to use my edit pattern tools. So the first thing that I want to do in this case, I think I want to try and lower my armhole a little bit. And with my edit pattern tool, I can come and select any point or any line of my pattern and drag it to adjust it. So I'm going to come and select my front and back underarm point in my 2D window, and I'm going to start dragging down. If you want to work quite precisely, you can right click at this stage to type in a specific measurement. I'm going to move this down by 5 centimeters and check how that sits in my 3D window. That's looking better in terms of the armhole. Now I want to give it a lot more volume here. I don't want it quite.
También quiero que tenga un poco más de volumen. Entonces lo que voy a hacer es elegir que la costura coincida. Entonces voy a estirar un poco esto para que quede más tejido y ver cómo va quedando. Perfecto, esto es un poco más como el volumen que quería crear. Y también voy a utilizar, ya que tenemos la simulación, van a ver que tenemos una pequeña herramienta de mano que nos permite ir corriendo el género a la posición correcta. Van a ver que la tela va reaccionando como la tela real. Yo para este avatar, para este modelo, he elegido un género que es básico. Pueden elegir el que ustedes quieran. Voy a estirar un poquito más el patrón. Un poquito más. Porque quiero que cubra un poco más hasta que me guste el volumen elegido. Y ahora lo que quiero crear es un canal para pasar un elástico. Y para hacer eso se puede hacer de dos formas. Podemos elegir la herramienta de polígono o podemos elegir también la herramienta de líneas de polígono que es interna. Esto me va a permitir ir trazando en 2D una línea que también se va a replicar en el 3D. También puedo hacerlo, sino también con la lapicera en el modo 3D. Van a ver este que parece un bolígrafo tradicional. Y aquí puedo ir dibujando todo lo que quiera en el patrón, por ejemplo. Y me voy a ir asegurando de que pase por la misma altura en todos los lados, que la línea sea recta en todos lados, y voy a hacer doble clic para terminar. Y van a ver que las mismas líneas aparecen en el patrón. Ahora voy a utilizar la herramienta de edición de bolígrafo. Es muy similar a lo que utilizamos en InDesign, Photoshop o Illustrator. Y van a ver que toda herramienta que nos sirve para crear algo tiene una herramienta paralela que nos sirve para editarlo. Aquí voy a hacer clic en las líneas para convertirlas en una forma interna para que pueda verlas también.
Not the best line. I'm going to come and readjust it in my 2D window like I want it to be. So I want that to be straight. I'm going to come and make sure that this line matches up at my center front. And underneath my edit pattern tool, I've got a tool which allows me to edit curvature. So here I'm not 100% happy with this curve. So with my edit curvature tool, I can just come and click and drag and adjust the curve of that pattern. Back to my edit pattern tool, you'll see that some tools have keyboard shortcuts next to them. So you can, if you want to work with keyboard shortcuts, remember those. Z is a very handy one to know so that you don't have to always go back. And I'm going to come and readjust these until I'm happy with my position. I'm happy with this. I now want this to become a separate pattern piece. So I'm going to select these lines in 2D, right click, cut and sew. And this will have created a separate pattern piece. You can see that in 2D, it's become a separate pattern piece. But the advantage of doing it this way is that if I move it in Clo, you can see these colored lines. This is the sewing that has automatically connected. Going to simulate that. And now I want it to actually gather together. So I'm going to select on my back panel, my top and bottom section, right click, and I'm going to use an option called Distribute Internal Line Between Segment, which is going to allow me, I'm going to create, nope, I'm not happy with that. I might need to come and make my center front, it's not 100% straight. I'm going to come and make it 100%. Oops, it's a bit too much. Oops, I'm going to make sure that I'm not simulating anymore because that will give my computer a bit of a break. So I want it to be here, perfectly 90 degrees. Go back, make sure that this is straight. I'm going to delete any kind of curve points on this line so that it's a perfectly straight line, and I'm going to do it on the front straight away so that I don't have the same problem when working on the front. Perfect. And let's try, as we say in English, third time's the charm. And now I should be able, oops, someone issue with a microphone there? It's not very happy with my internal lines this morning. I'm going to go and do it a different way. I'm going to right click on my top line and offset as internal line. So I'm going to still create my 3 lines of stitching and I'm going to make them
inferior sea igual a la superior. Le doy 3 centímetros de margen para la costura, 2,5 centímetros. Voy ajustando esto también. Ahí queda. Y ahora voy a aplicar elástico a estas líneas. El elástico en Clo es muy fácil, no es necesario hacer costuras superiores, sino que simplemente en el editor de propiedades van a ver que hay una opción que se llama elástico. La voy a encender y inmediatamente me va a crear un elástico que voy a simular y van a ver cómo esto se une. Aquí estamos empezando a tomar forma, todavía no me convence, pero para terminar, lo que me gustaría hacer es hacer una falda inferior. Aquí tengo la banda elástica que tengo en la cintura y van a ver que en cualquier línea en la que yo haga clic, me permita ver las medidas de la línea. Entonces voy a crear ahora un rectángulo que tenga las mismas medidas, 23,4 centímetros, y le voy a dar 45, bueno, 35 centímetros. Vamos a hacerla un poco más corta, como una falda de tenis. Y voy a hacer lo mismo en la parte frontal, con la misma medida, muy fácil, 23,42 y 35 de largo. Y luego, una de mis herramientas favoritas de Clo es comenzar a hacer que mis piezas se vean más libres, más sueltas. Van a ver que lo único que tengo que hacer es agregar cosas. Y van a ver que las primeras líneas que fuimos creando nos llevan bastante tiempo. Pero si vamos a esta herramienta que se llama línea completa, que nos permite ir a la parte superior e inferior del patrón, nos permite ir cambiando. Van a ver aquí las medidas de la parte inferior y superior y van a ver que podemos ir agregando centímetros para ir haciendo la prenda más suelta. Esto va a ir, digamos, agrandando nuestro patrón. También lo voy a hacer en el patrón trasero de la prenda. Dijimos que había agregado unos 30 centímetros. Y ahora voy a utilizar nuevamente mis herramientas de costura para unir estas líneas. Voy a también unir mis líneas laterales. Y luego me voy a asegurar de desdoblar mi diseño para que sea simétrico. Esto también nos serviría para que en la vida real podamos elegir si imprimir o crear el molde que fuera un corte completo o cortar solo la mitad, por ejemplo. Aquí voy a reacomodar para tener el género ubicado de la forma que yo quiero en la ventana 3D. Y algo que también podríamos simular es asegurarnos de que la costura esté sobre la prenda y que no esté atravesando ninguna parte del avatar. Y aquí ven que el género finalmente cae y puedo así asegurarme de que me guste el volumen que elegí para la prenda. Y ahora vamos a hacer algunas ediciones estéticas.
Fabric one, which is a default kind of calico fabric. If you go into the fabric folder in your library and you've downloaded all the extra bits, the extra assets that it downloads with your little N icon here at the top, you can come and scroll down and see the range of fabrics that already exist in Clo. It works like with avatars. If you put your mouse on top of it, you'll see a preview. So that very first big square is the texture. If you were looking at the fabric flat, then it shows you the drape of the fabric, and then you have the actual technical information about the fabric. Let's see what this would look like. I'm going to click and drag this on top of my little fabric one to see what that looks like in a silk crepe de chine. And you'll see that if you simulate, Clo automatically adjusts to the actual drape of the fabric. If I go in to show you the difference, if I go in with let's say a cotton gabardine, you'll see that this skirt will start flaring out a lot more because it won't drape quite as much. With all these fabrics, if you open up the property editor underneath, you can come and adjust the actual properties of the fabric. So I've selected the fabric in my object browser. And if you open up the property editor, you can see, so the texture is what Clo has created as the surface of the fabric. The normal map is what is going to give it its actual 3D effect. So if I zoom in here, you can actually see the effect of the cotton canvas, and the normal map allows it to give the 3D texture. The opacity, if you want to adjust the opacity, particularly if you're working with a sheer fabric. The reflection and the metalness, the roughness and the metalness will be the shine. And you'll have the physical properties below, which allow you to adjust the stretch, the bending, and the weft on the weft and the warp of the fabric. One of the most interesting ones for us to work with is in terms of colors here. If I just click on that little color swatch, you can go in and add any color that you want. Let's go in with slightly nude pink. And that will apply to all the fabric. I'm going to go in and show you a couple more things before we open up to Q&A. The first thing is that I want to put my actual logo onto this garment. So in order to apply a logo, this is a tool which exists in 3D or in 2D as well. It's this little t-shirt icon with a little black and white squares called graphic, and it works in 2D or in 3D. If you click on it, it will ask you to go and find the icon or the graphic that you've created. Where is my logo? That's my logo there. I'm going to be a little bit self-centered and put my own logo on there. And then you just have to go and click on the pattern piece where you want to position it. You can directly adjust the size in this first pop-up that appears. So I'm probably going to try and make this 7 centimeters wide. If you have a specific position that you want it to be, you can adjust the measurements there. Otherwise, I'm going to go in with now my edit graphic tool and come and reposition it. And you'll see that it adjusts it in my 3D window. Same thing as with our fabric. I can come and select my logo here in my object browser. My logo is black, so I'm going to start by desaturating it to remove the color. And then I can come and adjust the color if I want it to be a different color. Perfect. I'm happy with that. Graphics will have the same kind of properties where you will have shadows. You can increase the shadow intensity, the reflection, so that you can give it more or less shine. And depending on the effect that you're trying to create, if, for example, you wanted a metallic fused pressed on effect that you find on certain kind of garments, you could select the different fabric type here. You'll see that some of our properties, some of our selections here, so have render only after them. Render only means that you won't necessarily see the difference here in my 3D window. But if you come here at the top, we will see our actual render window. This was a project that I'll share with you afterwards, which will give me a more realistic effect. So what we work with in the simulation properties is not bad. What I work with in my render window will actually give me a lot more realistic effects, both in the texture of the skin, as well as any kind of metallic effects. So you can see the light is quite bright. The light settings that I've got on this project right now are quite bright. So it doesn't show the metallic effect the best, but you can see that it's reflecting a little bit the shine of the light.
Muestra también cómo se refleja el brillo de la luz sobre la estampa que elegí para mi logo. Otra cosa más que quiero mostrarles antes de escuchar sus preguntas es que si ustedes van en línea, podemos ir a las plataformas en línea que tiene Clo. Estas plataformas son dos. Una se llama Closet Connect y la otra que se llama simplemente Closet. La plataforma de Connect es una biblioteca donde muchas personas van subiendo sus proyectos, patrones, y ustedes pueden elegir si descargarlos gratuitamente o también pueden pagar algunos de estos y trabajar sobre esos proyectos. ¿Por qué? Porque Clo tampoco se utiliza únicamente para diseñadores, hay personas que lo utilizan para campañas o para crear universos completos. Es perfecto para cuando trabajamos con géneros. Y si hay algo específico que estén buscando, les recomiendo algo que no esté en la biblioteca de Clo, les recomiendo muchísimo que se acerquen a la plataforma y van a ver que también tienen otros géneros disponibles que pueden seleccionar, particularmente si tienen alguna propiedad específica que quieren, como por ejemplo el neopreno, tal vez sea un artículo pago, por eso no lo encuentro. Parece que lo han eliminado, pero era algo muy bueno para descargar. Pero bueno, tienen distintos tipos de géneros, distintos tejidos. hay también muchas fabricantes de
what they're making in real life. So you'll see that a lot of brands, a lot of mills and fabric suppliers, Sunwell, for example, are now recreating their fabrics in Clo-3D so that brands can take what they're making in real life and create an exact replica with the exact properties and the exact fabric that they would be using in real life. You'll also find all sorts of accessories. So in my Clo-3D, I've got this extra library assets folder where I've got different earrings, different accessories, glasses, and additional hairs. Let me stop my render and refresh that so that you'll see she probably needs some sunglasses considering how sunny it is in that setup. Last thing that I want to talk about before I open up to questions is that Clo-set platform. So Clo-set is a really good one because when I'm working in Clo, a lot of you will see that it takes quite a lot of power on your computer to work in Clo, particularly if you're working in rendering mode or animation. So you might find that rendering happens a lot quicker if your computer is struggling a little bit to do it directly on the Clo-set platform. And this is where this little icon, if I go back into Clo, we've got this little C in a cloud, and that allows us to import our project into Clo. It's a slightly more basic version, but it allows us to do a lot of things quite quickly without asking so much power from our computer. It also means that you can share projects very easily. I could, because these Clo-3D projects are quite heavy because they're going to not only remember the pattern, but how it drapes, the avatar, the measurements. If I've got a 3D environment, it's got to collect all that data in my project file. So sending those back and forth, especially if you're working with a supplier abroad, can mean lots of WeTransfers, whereas you can create a workspace in Clo, create a new workroom, and then share that with your suppliers in whatever country they are, and then work simultaneously on the same project. It's also a good way of sharing technical information, and some people are using it to replace their tech packs entirely. So I'm just going to bring back to our very final image of Clo so that before I open up to questions, you can start seeing that metallic effect, which is now appearing on my logo there. I'm quite happy with this. I'll probably save this project. I'm just going to very quickly change the pose. And then I'll open the floor up to questions. Let's go with something a little bit more dynamic. Hope I'm not asking too much of my computer. Come on, let's go. I'm maybe going to close my render window first so that it can very quickly readjust. I might have to come and pull my skirt down because it's catching a little bit with the hand of my avatar. Oh, that's giving a lot of volume. So I'm going to come and pull that through. Oops, and bring back my render window to show you that is creating a lot of volume in the back. Let's come and pull that down a little bit. I'm going to come and pull that over the waist. Come on, Clo. There we go, so that it drapes back over. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to open it up to you all and the questions that you might have.
Thank you, Lianne. Amazing. Amazing how quickly you can manage to do all that. It's incredible. No, so much time it takes in the physical world. So we have a lot of questions
Got a few questions that I can see there. Shall I just
some of
and if there's anything that I need translation for, I can ask you?
Yes, of course, of course.
Perfect. Downloading, so Calixto, your question on can we download poses for free? Absolutely, you will have poses in the Clo-set Connect space. Also, one thing that I can very quickly show you, if I share my screen again, I'm going to close my my render window. If I go back to an A pose, oops, there we go. It's back to being as it should. If I go into my avatar display options here, you've got the fourth icon is our joints, and you can come and adjust a pose exactly as you want it to be. So you can, let me switch my simulation off, come and adjust. Let me come and select this here. Trying to ask my computer to do things, I think, a little bit too quickly today. Come on, Clo. and then adjust with my gizmo. So kind of like for our patterns, come and adjust our pose depending on what you want it to be. I've seen some students have a lot of fun with adjusting the pose, working with very natural poses, but also some that have started recreating the name of their brands by the pose that their avatar was taking. So that's make the avatar move. And to make the avatar move for walking, for example, that would be animation. So once you've created your project and it's draping nice and neatly, you can add a motion file to it. So Clo has some default motion files in there, like running, walking up and down a runway. But you can also use animations in Mixamo. I unfortunately won't have time to cover that today, but there's loads of information and tutorials online, or I'm happy for you to contact me on LinkedIn and I can share some videos that I've created myself to explain how we can make the avatar move and walk. In terms, so some of you have noticed there is a little bit of volume in the armhole. I've created a block that doesn't have any kind of darts. We can obviously create darts in Clo, otherwise it would kind of limit what we are trying to do in real life. One of the ways of adjusting a dart, and this is something that would work very easily, I'm going to just make sure my joint points have been removed. So this extra volume at the top here, if I wanted to readjust this, I would start, I've got a little pin icon here, which is called tack, which will allow me to pinch in. So I'm going to select both sides of this little bit of extra volume that I want to check. If I simulate that, that will tack that closed, exactly like a little stitch that I would have in real life. So this is the amount that I would have to take in. So that's 1.88 centimeters there. With my edit pattern tool, I can right click. I'm going to split to add a point along my line. And where I've got that line selected, right click, add dart. And that will allow me to create a dart. So the total width of my dart, I think 2 centimeters will be fine. And I can make it as long or as short as I need it to be. I'm going to click, there we go, click and drag a curve point. Okay, so we're going to come and click and drag that one to there. And we just need to readjust this curve so that it sits nice and neatly and it smooths out my edge. Okay, and press enter. There we go. And now if I simulate, that's got my dart. You can come in. If I'm entirely honest, I'm not super happy with this dart. I can go in with my edit pattern tool and just come and adjust the point already by starting to adjust that point a little bit lower. And I would probably want to move this, which I would move in a second kind of stage. That's very quickly answered that one. I hope I'll still be able to answer a few more.
Yes, we have a few more questions. They're asking about courses, online courses of Clo-3D at Istituto Marangoni. Actually, we have a course, but it's live in the in the Dubai Center. Just to make a brief introduction about Istituto Marangoni, is a very global institution with different schools in London, in Milan, in Firenze, in Paris also, and they also have schools in Dubai, Shanghai, Shenzhen, and Mumbai. So it's a very, very international school, and the school that is offering right now specific courses of Clo-3D is the one in Dubai. But any question regarding courses, we will get in contact with you afterwards via email to go to the 101. Let's continue with Lianne, take advantage that we have Lianne here to talk about Clo-3D. Let me check if we have any pending question that you have not answered yet.
I can see Catalina's asked about downloading the avatar. In which type of format is it going to download? So the avatar that you're going to download, and that you're going to, if you create an avatar and we adjust the measurements that we've created, it kind of works like Legos.
Crea el avatar y que nosotros creamos las distintas medidas. El avatar en sí funciona más o menos como si estuviéramos trabajando con Legos. Si yo ajusto las medidas, cambio aquí la configuración, puedo aplicar estas mismas medidas a cualquier otro avatar que yo incorpore. Entonces, por ejemplo, si estoy trabajando, por ejemplo, creo que estaba trabajando con Camila, pero si trabajara con cualquiera de los otros avatares, podría estar viendo las distintas figuras, color de piel, forma del cabello. Puedo utilizar otro avatar y incorporarle las mismas medidas que ya creé. Algo que también me preguntan mucho los alumnos es sobre la postura, sobre las medidas, las gafas y si todo lo que les gusta va a ir cambiando también. Pueden, si a ustedes les gusta trabajar muchas veces con los mismos, pueden ir a guardar como y guardar el avatar como un objeto 3D con todas las medidas y los objetos que han incorporado.
We have Paula that she's
Si
wants.
tenemos otra pregunta, la pregunta de Paula. Sí, adelante, Paula. Hola, muchas gracias por la explicación, fue genial. Yo soy de la Universidad de UABE de Argentina y estoy estudiando diseño textil y de modas y me gustaría saber si una...
and everything design, would you like to just download the patterns cutting so we can just like actually use it to cut the real fabric basically? Is that an option?
So yes, and I think that ties up to another question in the chat, being able to print out these patterns. So you can, there's a lot of information and there's demos online on how to convert this into A4s and then stick them back together. But you can also, if you've got a large scale printer, let me again just open my screen back up. This will be, if you go into your print layout mode, you'll actually see, so this is the width of my fabric, this is all my pattern pieces. And if I use my automatic nesting, it will automatically start positioning my pattern pieces in the width of my fabric. One of the main things to note with Clo-3D though, is that when we're working in our 2D space, we don't work with seam allowance. By default, we're just sewing edge to edge because we are doing it digitally and not with seam allowance. So if you want to print them out, or if you want to make sure that it's nesting with the seam allowance, you can use your seam allowance tool. And one quick way to do it is just click a box around it and that will add the seam allowance all the way around.
That's amazing. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. So maybe there are some questions that haven't been answered. If you want to raise your hand and make it live, you're absolutely welcome. So, any other question? You can go either in Spanish. Las preguntas pueden ser en español o en inglés. Any question, because we have. The audio, the only thing that the audio is not very clear. Let me check if there's any other question in the chat. If not, this has been so clear, Lianne. Thank you very much.
It's a very short introduction. I tried to pack in as much as I could. If you've got any questions that I haven't answered today, please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm not necessarily the fastest at answering on LinkedIn, but I promise I will get there.
I think somebody else is raising the hand, but I'm not sure I'm realizing who. Okay, no, I think it's all fine. So, well, amazing, Lianne. Thank you very much for this speed knowledge of Clo-3D. It's incredible how you managed to pack all the information in such a short time. So yes, everybody that's interested in contacting Lianne, you can chat with her via LinkedIn. We will also be sending the record afterwards by email, and we will have, you can check in the chat for our email if you have more questions about anything, about Clo-3D, about online courses that we have in Dubai, about courses at the Istituto Marangoni, or anything you want to know. We're here to help. So thank you very much for your participation. I hope you enjoyed as much as us. And thank you, Lianne, for your time.
My pleasure. Have a lovely day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.